not just my research, is that we've seen that kids who really push limits and push boundaries and test with their parents have better social outcomes. They understand themselves in ways that children who simply comply and never push, they don't ever get to try on different ways of being that are helpful to know as they become adults. And so the short answer here, in my opinion, is that kids are hardwired to push. It's their job to push boundaries, and it's our job to hold them. The tension that creates is an incredibly important experience for our kids. Here's why. We did a couple of focus groups with young college adults, 18, 19 years old, and asking them really about the boundaries their parents set, how strict were their parents. Let me tell you what happened, because it changed my life. As soon as we opened the floor to discussion around the question of, tell me about the limits that were set by your parents, how strict were your parents, what kind of rules did you have, what ensued was a battle of whose parents were the strictest. So what we heard was, oh man, my parents were super strict. I couldn't even see an R-rated movie till I was 17. R-rated movie? R-rated movie? I was never allowed to see an R-rated movie. I couldn't see a PG movie when I was 20. It was outrageous. I wasn't allowed to watch this and this on television. Oh, how nice you had a television. We didn't even have one in our house. I was only allowed to watch PBS. It was this exaggerated bragging rights about whose parents were the strictest, which was telling in itself. But here was the piece that was life-changing for me as a parent. There were a couple of people in this focus group who did not speak and who actually kind of their heads went down and their body language just was screaming discomfort and maybe even shame. Afterward, I asked one of the doctoral students who was there with me, did you see that? And they said, oh man, absolutely. And I pulled those kids aside and talked to them a little bit about it. And what emerged in both of those interviews was I had no rules. I had no boundaries. I got to do whatever I wanted to do. My parents really didn't care. My parents were the ones who bought all the booze for the parties. I wasn't sure if it was an anomaly. I wasn't sure if it was something that just kind of was a coincidence. We had one more focus group, same exact dynamic. The kids who were raised with boundaries, were raised with rules, really spoke up, and the kids who had none were just completely quiet. They did not engage at all. And what was important about that for me is that I never saw not having rules, not having boundaries, not being told no, not having set limits was never bragging rights. Kids were not proud of that. And I think what happens is, it's really tough when we've got a 16-year-old and we're setting limits. And clearly, I don't know, because my daughter is getting ready to be 13 and we are just now in that territory and it's already rocky. But what I know from how I was parented is that I had very set boundaries and my parents were absolutely engaged and paying attention, and there were rules, and the rules were often in my best interest. And what I think that means for children is you're watching and you care and you're looking out for me. I love to use the metaphor of, those big bridges that go across the caverns, and they're the rickety bridges, and the wood slats make up the bottom of them, and then the ropes make up the side of them. The cavern underneath is 1,000 feet down. Parenting without boundaries is like sending your children racing across that bridge and taking off the handrails. Boundaries give kids something to hold on to. It gives them a sense of security, safety, enclosure. I can step out and do some adventurous things, but I can try. What I found in my research is the kids who were willing to dare the most and take chances and innovate and create were kids that had pretty sophisticated boundaries from their parents. Our kids depend on limits. Our job is to hold them.